All right, so we've got some content in our cells now, and now we can see that our middle name is covering up part of our last name. Now, if I click on this cell A1, you can see up in the formula bar, the last name still exists. So it didn't replace it, it didn't remove it, it's just not showing because it's like sitting behind the cell. So I wanna make sure that you know that any of these cells, you don't have to skip. Like I don't have to take my middle name, delete it so that my last name will show, and then skip over to column C to be able to do this. This is the incorrect way to use Excel. So please, please, please do not do this. You have the ability to adjust everything inside the spreadsheet. You can make these columns wider. You can make these rows taller. You can do whatever you want. You can take this text, you can make it wrap so that it like pops down to the next line and creates multiple lines inside of a cell. Because if I keep typing and I add stuff, you can see like it'll keep going and going and going across the page. And that's just not conducive to be able to like skip this cell. Like I don't need to skip this cell. And now I would have to even have my middle name over in column D to be able to see all that. That's just not a good way to do it, right? So I'm going to have my middle name here. And what I want to challenge you to do is pause the video here and see if there's any way that you can get your full name to show up here. Any way at all. So I'm going to make this back to be my full name. Any way you can get that to make your full name show all the way. So go ahead and pause the video here and see if you can do that. So there's a couple ways that we can make this happen. First, I can take the column A, and remember I said you can like select cells in here, you can click and drag, but then if you go up to the letter up at the top, and this is pretty important, you can click on it to select the whole column. I can take this, and if I put my cursor between two columns, I get a little line with two arrows, and I can click and I can drag to adjust the width of a column. So I can make a column way wider than it needs to be, or I can make it exactly the width that I need. Another feature that you have is like, go ahead and make it too small for your name, like make it just a little too small, and go up to between the columns and double click here instead of just clicking and dragging. When you double click, you'll see that it will pop to the longest word. If I go double click between B and C right now, it will pop to the longest word in that column, which is my middle name, and pop to the end of it. I can also make rows taller, so I can go between the numbers here and increase the height of a row. If I want to make this column shorter, like thinner here, and I want to fit more in this cell, I can take the cell and I can wrap the text up in the alignment group here, which will push words to the next line, having multiple words inside of here. So you should never be skipping a column. Never, ever, ever, because you don't need to. If you know how to utilize your skills to make columns wider, make rows taller, and wrap text, you can fit whatever content you want to inside of a cell. I can also take multiple columns, like I can click and drag across the letters. So everybody go ahead and click and drag across the letters. I'm going to do A through D. And when I go to change the size of these columns, I can click and drag, and you can see how wide it's going next to you. So like I'm going to go to like 15. Ish. You don't have to be exact. It doesn't have to be exact. Okay. And I'm going to let go. And with all 4 columns selected, it's going to change them all to 15 at the same time. So you can select multiple columns. You can select multiple rows. You can do all those kinds of things and be able to change them. The next thing I want to talk about is your cursors. So your cursor by default is going to be a plus sign, right? And you can select cells. You can click and drag to select multiple cells. You can just click in one. And I highly suggest that when you're using this white plus sign, you are clicking in the center of the cell. Don't click on the edge. Don't click on the center of the cells and drag. So what we're going to do is we're going to select our first and last name and our middle name, both cells at the same time. Even though this cell is white, still selected because it's got this green border around it. And I'm going to copy it. So you can copy it up in the ribbon. You can right click copy just like always. You can hit Control C on your keyboard. You'll see that when you copy it, it gets these like little ants dancing around it because these are the cells that it's copied. And I'm going to go down to like A10 here, click in the cell, and I'm going to paste it. So I can paste it here. I can right click and paste in the drop down menu or the menu, choosing the first option, or I can hit Control V on my keyboard. You can see that just the text and content comes. It doesn't bring the height with it. I would have to adjust the height manually of row 10. But what I want to show you is that I can also take this so we've copied, we pasted. You can see it's still got the ants dancing around. The second that you click inside of a cell, like let's go down to B10 here, I'm going to double click. It will take me into the cell to make changes the second you start making changes in any cell. And you can see that the ants like disappeared. So it will keep your copy in its in its background so it knows what you've copied until you click somewhere else. You don't have to click somewhere else and get started on something. It's not going to like do anything wrong with your computer. They disappear once you're done using the copy feature. But what I do want to show is that when you select cells and you get this green border, if you hover over the border, not in the bottom right hand corner, because that's a different cursor, you can see that's a black crosshair, which we'll talk about in a minute, probably in the next video. But when you hover over any border, you can see that it turns into like a move icon. So I can click and drag and move these cells around to any cells in the spreadsheet, right? So I can take a cell and I can move it. I can even move it over the other cells, A10 and B10, and it will ask me like, do you want to replace the data that's here? And we can hit OK and replace it with what we have. And then we can move it back up to where we were. So you have the ability to select cells with the plus sign, and then you have the ability to move cells. And in the next video, we're going to start talking about this black crosshair because it's pretty powerful and is the bread and butter of Excel and makes you like a magical wizard that even adults are like, what the heck did you just do? It's pretty cool.